Afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday, March 3rd, 2021 special City Council meeting. And if we could have a roll call, please.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Here.
Councilmember Meyer?
Here.
Councilmember Rary?
Here.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Here.
Mayor Bryant?
Here. Okay, we do have a quorum, so at this time we will move directly into public comments, and I'll turn it to Margaret.
Immediately following the public comment portion of the WebEx link will no longer be active, and interviews will only be streamed on the city's meeting streaming software located on the City Council agenda page. Public comments. At this time, the public is permitted to address the City Council on items that are on the special meeting agenda. I received 0 written public comments by noon today for this item. If you wish to speak under public comment, please raise your hand using the WebEx feature, and I will call your name if provided and unmute you to speak. Remarks are limited to 3 minutes per person, and your microphone will be muted after the timer has expired. While we encourage your comments, state law prevents the City Council from discussing items that are not on their meeting agenda, and if appropriate, staff will follow up on them. I do see that I have one hand raised, Clifton Fagerquist. Mr. Fagerquist, I'll go ahead and unmute you now. Go ahead.
Okay, so with respect to public comments, is it only on public comments on what is on the agenda today?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. It is only on items that are on tonight's agenda. Any other public comments that may be made will be made at the regular meeting of the City Council for March 9th, 2021.
Okay, thank you. Then I have nothing to say. Thank you.
I do have another hand raised, Danny Dorman. Mr. Dorman, go ahead.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll be brief. I just hope everyone does the right thing today. The amount of candidates should be enough. Hopefully there won't be any partisanship and the usual things that go on here in Brentwood. I really think we're on the right course, and I hope it stays true today. Thank you.
There are no additional speakers with their hands raised.
Thank you. So at this time, I will close public comment, and we'll now take a 5-minute recess so that we can move to the other link, and members of the public may move to the video feed on the city's website to view the remainder of the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks for using WebEx. Visit our website at www.webex.com.
Andy, we need to call in.
Completed is dialed. Please consult your directory and call again or ask your operator for assistance. Be completed as dialed. Please consult your directory.
Andy, can you help me dial?
Oh, there's the meeting.
Be completed as dialed. Please consult your directory.
Can you dial in from there? Okay. So trying to dial in.
Be completed as dialed. Please consult your directory and call again, or ask your operator. Welcome to WebEx. Enter your access code or meeting number followed by pound. Your entry, 10, is not valid or the meeting has not started yet. Re-enter your access code or meeting number followed by pound. Enter your attendee ID number followed by pound. Enter your attendee ID number followed by pound. Enter your attendee ID number followed by pound.
I really feel for those teachers that have to do this every day with like 30 kids.
This is supposed to get easier as we do more of this, but it doesn't seem to be.
We'll get there as soon as the pandemic is over.
That's right.
Every day with like 30 kids. I see Joel. Joel's there now.
No, that's live, right?
Okay. Okay. Okay, do I have everybody in the session. Can you guys hear me okay?
We're missing Susanna and Johnny.
Okay.
Check the lobby.
We're missing Susanna and Johnny.
Let me see.
And we have a voice delay.
Oh. Let's see. There's Susanna. Move to session. And now we're just waiting for Vice Mayor Rodriguez. I resent the link. And he's with us.
Councilmember Meyer, are you able to show your video? Perfect.
Great. So it looks like that we are all finally here together. Can we make sure that everyone's microphone is working? Start with Councilmember Mendoza.
Hi.
And Councilmember Meyer.
I'm here.
Councilmember Rary.
I hope you can hear me loud and clear.
Loud and clear. And Vice Mayor Rodriguez.
I'm here.
Okay, great. It looks like everything is working. So at this point, we will enter into the interviews and appointment commissioners to the Planning Commission part. And at this point, I will ask the Interim Community Development Director to explain this part of the process. Terrence.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, the Planning Commission interviews will be held pursuant to the process that the Council previously agreed to. Prior to this meeting, the Mayor and Council provided the City Clerk with questions to ask the applicant. Each applicant will be asked the same 5 questions and will have up to 3 minutes to answer each question. Limited follow-up questions may be permitted by the Mayor based on available time. The applicants are in a separate breakout room that does not permit them to listen to another applicant's responses. They are also on the honor system that they will not be using another device to listen to an applicant's response. Once interviews have concluded, there will be an opportunity for the Council to discuss the applicants. When any discussion has concluded, each Council member will be asked to verbally provide the Mayor with their choices for the 3 open positions on the Commission in order from first to last. The Mayor will then provide his 3 recommendations from first to last to the Council for appointment to the Planning Commission. The Council will then hold individual votes on each of the Mayor's recommended appointments. If a recommended applicant receives 3 votes, then he or she is appointed to the Planning Commission for the recommended term. If less than 3 applicants are appointed to the Planning Commission, then the mayor may recommend appointing another applicant today or request that the opening be re-advertised. The city clerk has drawn the applicants' names in a random order, and they will now be brought into the interview breakout room one at a time. Please note that earlier today, Mr. Barnett removed himself from the process and will not be interviewed. Likewise, late breaking news, Sergeant Maloney has due to unforeseen circumstances, will not be able to be interviewed today. So at this point, based on the city clerk's drawing, she should admit the applicants to the interview process.
Terrence, before we move forward, the vice mayor let me know that in process of submitting the questions, he wasn't aware that the questions would be submitted in preference from 1 to 3, and had let me know that his second question was actually his primary question. Is there a process, and Damien, you would probably be who to ask, since no questions have been asked yet, and of course none of us know what his questions would be outside of what we were presented earlier. Is there a way for him to ask the question that he wanted, or is he going to need to ask the one that is on the list?
Mr. Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, it was my understanding that the Council's been provided with a revised list of questions that includes Vice Mayor Rodriguez's preferred question.
Okay.
The City Clerk sent that at 3:34 today. I just to confirm, if the Vice Mayor can look at that question, if that was the one that he wanted to ask, then I think we're fine.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez, the question that you have on the list right now, is that the one on the revised list? Is that the one you wanted to ask?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, then I think we're all good to go. Thank you. Thanks, Terrence.
Not at all.
I'll bring in the first interviewee, and my random order, I have Mr. Dolter first.
Good afternoon, Mr. Dolter, and thank you for joining us once again. This process is going to be the same process that the council used for the Arts and the Parks and Rec Commission.
Okay.
The process will be that each council person will ask you exactly the same questions that everyone else would be asked. There will be 5 questions asked of each council person, and then we will make the decision, work on the decision-making process today.
Okay.
At this time, I will turn it to Council Member Mendoza for her questions.
Thank you. Hello, Mr. Dolter, and welcome.
Hello. Thank you.
I want to learn a little bit more about your knowledge around Brentwood development projects. Thinking about a specific project, what did you do to learn more about the recent land use project, and what resources did you use?
The most popular project in town has to be Bridlegate. So I took a look at the staff reports and the minutes and the EIR, both the draft and the final, and took a look at the site plan and the landscape plans and what the commission did, and you have your work cut out for you at the next meeting when you will consider all this. So I took a look at the development agreement because I like development agreements. I think that's where the business deal is, and I thought it was a little light in terms of public benefits for the cities, from the city's point of view, but that's just me. The rest of the stuff in there was fairly pro forma for a project that size. I mean, I understand the political implications of amending the general plan and jobs versus housing and all that. And it's just something that the community has to deal with. And it was a difficult decision, I think, for the commission, even though it was unanimous. But so you have your plate full when it comes up before you. So I did take a look at your general plan. I know what's going on, generally speaking, with your trying to get your zoning ordinance up to speed and in sync with your general plan. I do agree with the recommendations in the report that the staff put together regarding changing the ordinance so that you have minor use permits. It'll streamline the process. I mean, a perfect example was the Planning Commission last night when they took up that dental office. The commission doesn't need to hear items like that. That can be done by staff. Hopefully that will occur and you will endorse that ordinance change when it comes before you.
Can I ask a clarifying question around something you said? We have a very vocal, group of residents. Actually, all of our residents are pretty involved for the most part. And you said community has to deal with it when it came to like the political stuff. What do you think the best way is it for us to deal with all? And I don't even know if this is like a good question, but all of that. I just want some clarifying by what you meant by community has to deal with it.
Well, the community deals with it in a number of ways. It has the special interest groups that are vocal on the internet and that appear before the Planning Commission and the Council, and that's as it should be. Every community has that, including Brentwood. And you need to listen to them. But at the end of the day, it's the Council, by way of, if it's land use items, by way of the Planning Commission that has to make the decision.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
Councilor Meyer. And from now on, we'll just go like we did last time. So it's okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Dolter.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Thank you for joining us. In making land development use decisions, how would you rate your priorities? And I'm going to give you a list, and you can decide to just pick your top three, however you want to answer this question, between environmental impact, aesthetics, development, adjustments to municipal codes, traffic and congestion, infrastructure capacity, financial impact, and resident quality of life. Where do you prioritize those?
Oh, I wish I had that list before me. I
can read it again if you want.
To be perfectly honest, I like the aesthetics and quality of life. That may surprise a lot of people, but some of the other items are mitigatable, especially if you're subject to an EIR. There's mitigations for traffic in terms of fees and facilities that are built and so on, schools, parks, water lines, sewer, and so on. But aesthetics and quality of life, I think, are the most important. One of the reasons I moved to Brentwood in the first place, and a couple of years ago, was the parkways, the medians, the landscaping. Obviously, Shay does a terrific job out here at Trilogy, where I live. And I appreciate those qualities in a community, and this one is head and shoulders above your surrounding neighbors in terms of Oakley, Antioch, and the other communities that are nearby. It's obviously at least a preferred location as far as I'm concerned. So I would say aesthetics and community and quality of life are most important.
Because the rest of them pretty much would be by regulation and
yes, you're going to deal with those as a matter of course in terms of fees, construction, budgets. Those are going to be settled.
Great, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Dolter. I lost my question here.
Okay.
What have you done to prepare yourself for the role and responsibility of being a planning commissioner? And why do you believe you're more qualified for the appointment than the other applicants?
Did you pick that question, or was that assigned to you?
No, I picked that question, or I wrote that question out.
There you go. Obviously, I have a lot of experience on both sides of the podium. I have been behind the microphone many, many times. I am a former planning commissioner. I was the chair of a planning commission. I've served on numerous public agency boards and commissions. I've always felt it was my civic duty to do that in whatever community I lived at. I have been on the other side of the microphone as well, trying to get projects approved, so I know what that's like. I know what questions to ask, and I know how to answer those. So just from being around a long time, the nature of the experience that I have, it's just I feel I'm more qualified than probably many other candidates that you have.
Okay, thank you. Can't hear you.
Yes, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. It was me. Sorry about that, Mr. Dolter. Good afternoon. Nice seeing you again. Here's my question. The commission is responsible for design and review approvals of some new development, including architecture, landscaping, and lighting. Describe your decision-making process for a design review application that is opposed by the property owner or residents for reasons that are not design related.
Give me an example of who is opposing the application.
So it could either be the property owner or it could be residents from the community.
In terms of design?
Yes.
This would be color, texture, elevations of buildings, landscaping, those sorts of items?
Yeah. I'm okay with that.
I doubt whether the property owner would be opposed because he has to sign off on a development application that's being processed by a developer that's either has an option on his property or is in contract to buy it or something like that. So it wouldn't be a property. It might be a next door property owner that might object to a project.
So how would you handle that when it comes to your decision making related to that project?
Well, I mean, you have no choice but to listen carefully to what everybody is saying about the design. From a builder's standpoint, there's good arguments for why they are choosing a particular color or elevation or texture or what kind of stone, what kind of trim, and so on. It has to do with cost, and it has to do with their particular research on what they can sell and what people are buying in the marketplace. Landscaping is a little bit different. They're going to choose materials that are easy to maintain, beautiful, but nonetheless easy to maintain. And it's a matter of from the design reviewer's point of view, those on a design review committee or a design review commission, of taking a look and seeing if there's enough of it. Is the landscape plan sparse? Is it generous? Are there experts on the committee in landscape architecture who can weigh in on whether or not that's an appropriate street tree, for example, or a median tree or bush or whatever? So you've got to take all those points of view into consideration. And then you're going to have to defend it after you make, or when you're ready to make the decision, you need to defend that to the people that are objecting to it. But you try to handle the objections one at a time if you can, so you can address them and say, look, this is why the committee or the commission is feeling this particular way on that item that you're objecting to. It's a responsibility that the commission has, or that a member of the commission has.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yes.
Mr. Dolter, the last question is, please explain the duties of the Planning Commission.
To keep the council out of trouble. That's the main duty of the Planning Commission. No, there are statutory duties of planning commissions under state law, obviously, and in all cities, in California at least, by local ordinance. The main duties are to do a general plan and recommend a general plan and any specific plans to the city council for approval, and also to make sure that these going onward all the time is make sure that the zoning ordinance is compatible with the city's general plan and with state law. State law is always changing. It's always requiring cities to do something with their general plans or with their zoning ordinance, and the commission, you know, through the staff, obviously, is trying to keep up with those and make sure that the two primary duties, and that is the general plan and the zoning ordinance, are compatible and up to date. Those are the primary responsibilities. Now, in most cities, there's other things that they do in terms of design review for projects. They have to approve EIRs. They have to recommend on development agreements. They seldom are the court of last resort because everything's appealable to the council, almost everything, in most cities in California in any event. So, but I would say those are the two primary responsibilities: land use planning and implementation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes.
So that was the last questions from council. So at this time, I'll turn it to Terrence, and he can direct you from here.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I can jump in, Mayor. David, our city clerk will now excuse you, but thank you again for interviewing with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you very much, Mayor and Council, and Tim. Thank you. And Terrence.
Thank you, and thanks for stepping in, Tim. I was having some audio problems.
The next applicant is Sinziana Todor. I'll bring her in now.
Oh, I guess I'm next. Hello, everyone. I think I unmuted myself.
No, we'll be just fine, thanks. Thank you again for joining us. So this process will be exactly the same process that was used for the Arts Commission and the Planning Commission. I'm sorry, the Arts and Rec Commission. So what we'll do is we will have each individual council person ask you a question, and then at that point, have you answer the question, and then when we're finished here, you will be sent back to a waiting area for it. I'll turn it over to Council Member.
Hi, Cynthia. I want to learn more about your knowledge around Brentwood development project. Thinking about a specific project, what did you do to learn more about a recent land use project, and what resources did you use?
Well, thank you for your question. This is right up my alley because just down the street from me, Adams Lane. It's been a very disputed project for the neighborhood in general. And along with a couple of my neighbors, we formed a group, commission, if you will, kind of informal, to research and put together information and share with everyone what the project is about, what can be done, what's allowed, what's not allowed, according to what's stipulated in the zoning map, also in Brentwood Municipal Code. We used also the housing element document, and what else did we look at? Oh, and of course, general plan. So getting all this information from these various sources, like I said, first of all, we looked at general plan, and then at the zoning map. We went to the municipal code and learned about zoning regulations, what can be done with conditional use permit, if a use permit is on file for it, and so on. So we had all this information. We found that it was conflicting to some degree to what the developer presented to us during their Zoom meeting. And another great source for to get our information and confirm our research was also the planning group at the city, Eric Noltenius specifically, and we also worked with the planners reporting to him. So they were great source of information, and every time I reached out to them, they are very helpful and very knowledgeable in the same time. So I think these are the main sources that I was consulting for this particular project. I know when I was looking at Walnut Villas, there are additional documents that I looked at, and one of them was the residential and commercial design guidelines. I found that very helpful as far as analyzing the floor plans as well of the architectural features that were presented. So in general lines, I can list, like if any other project comes along, this will be the main document that I would consult for sure. And definitely I expect them to be aligned. So that's kind of my process.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Ms. Todor. In making land development and use decisions, how would you rate your priorities? I'm going to make a long list here, so you are welcome to pick from it.
Notes.
You can choose ones you like to, however you would like to prioritize. And what I've included is environmental impact, aesthetics, development, adjustments to municipal codes, traffic and congestion, infrastructure, financial impact, and quality of life. And I'm just kind of looking for your overall view on how you would prioritize those in making your decisions.
So if you don't mind, can you repeat the list because you were breaking up?
Sorry, I was noticing there was...
Oh, that's fine. Yeah.
I was noticing there was some breaking up when Jovita was talking as well. Sorry, Councilmember Mendoza. There's a little bit of audio things going on here, so I'm hopefully you'll be able to hear. But
okay.
Impact, aesthetics, development, adjustments to municipal codes, traffic and congestion, infrastructure capacity, financial impact, and quality of life.
Okay. So you want me to prioritize this, right? How?
Yes.
Okay. First things first, we start with the environmental impact. I think when we look at a brand new development, we have to have that global view of where it is, what's surrounding it, and all the categories as far as CEQA is listing all the categories that this particular project would impact. And then in the big scheme of things, definitely we would look at traffic, infrastructure. Traffic is kind of a sticky point, as we noticed throughout our interactions with the various developments around the city. Traffic always comes as number one. And it's directly tied into the environmental impact because of all the noise factors, pollution, and so on. And then as far as infrastructure, that will be something to consider as well, but I don't see it as number one. As we very well know, a lot of the development will bring improvements to the infrastructure, but definitely that will be a factor to analyze and keep in mind. Also, quality of life is impacted by all this. So cumulative, if we look at and analyze all these factors and we find deficiencies or gaps in any way, then definitely the result is a positive or negative impact on quality of life overall. So I see quality of life as kind of overarching or at the bottom, kind of going across all the factors that I listed in the priority. And aesthetics, I think as far as aesthetics, that's part of the design review, so that's kind of a standalone. It does definitely impact quality of life to some degree, but I don't think it's essential as far as overall impact on the community, but it is important as far as creating a place of belonging and harmonizing with the areas surrounding the particular development. So I'm not particularly worried, and probably came to mind last because City of Brentwood's been doing a great job maintaining good standards as far as aesthetics, but definitely it is something to consider when looking at the development.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon.
Hi, Karen. How are you?
What have you done to prepare yourself for the role and responsibility of being a planning commissioner, and why do you believe you are more qualified for this appointment than the other applicants?
Okay, there's a lot into this question, but I really appreciate it. What have I done? Nothing in particular, because I'm not a planner at this point, and I'm not a professional planner in any way, but I found very interesting researching all the documentation that I mentioned, answering the first question that Councilmember Mendoza posed, and researching all this documentation, understanding the general plan, all the design guidelines for residential, commercial, zoning map. I really like the pictures with different areas, different colors, and I think it's a very good document to help understand what goes where and what land use are permitted in different areas of the city. And it's actually a good tool for supporting a tool for conversations with the community in general, because it's very visual and people understand what goes where and what's in each place. What will make me a good commissioner? I'm not sure, really.
The question is, why do you feel that you are more qualified than the other applicants who have applied?
Oh, yeah, that's a little confusing, and I'm not sure how to answer, but I can tell you why I think I'm qualified. I can compare with other candidates because I don't know them personally. I haven't seen most of them involved in planning activities of any kind, but I can tell you what qualifies me, what I think qualifies me. First of all, I think I have a pretty good understanding of the issues facing our community in Brentwood today when it comes to development and anything that's expected by the community to happen in our city. Also, I find myself to be a pretty fair person and open-minded. And another thing that I believe qualifies me is that I am always prepared, and I love to be prepared. Reading and going through meeting materials and making sure I understand what's on the agenda all the time. I think it's a very, very it's a key factor in being a good professional in general. And also, I have the ability to communicate clearly and to the point, and I've been preparing for this pretty much all my life, being a member and a part of leadership of Toastmasters International. Also, my analytic abilities will definitely qualify me to understand all the details, also place those details in a big picture of any project that's being presented, and also identifying critical aspects of various projects that are being discussed. Also, I look at the analysis and understand typically I look long-term and short-term impacts of decisions to avoid unintended consequences as part of my analytical process. And relevant experience. Like I said, I don't think I'm a planner by any means, but I did obtain my real estate agent license long time ago, so I've been exposed to that industry. I've been part of architectural committee at Shadow Lakes HOA, and my mother is an architect, so that influenced my interest in aesthetics and buildings and understanding their functionality. And maybe I want to mention this. Most importantly, I've been managing along with my husband building 3 homes. So, our focus was always to integrate our property with specific of the neighborhood we were part of. And so I think that was helpful as well. So that's really my practical experience as far as qualifying for this position.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Ms. Todor. My name is Ms. Councilmember Vice Mayor Rodriguez. I'm sorry about that. My question is, the commission is responsible for design review approval of some new development, including architecture, landscaping, and lighting. Describe your decision-making process for a decision review application that is opposed by either the property owner or resident for reasons that are not design related. How would you handle it?
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor Rodriguez. It is another tricky question. This interview is full of surprises, looks like. So it sounds like you're referring to the design review phase of a project as opposed to the point where public input is accepted on a specific project.
Yeah,
Did I understand the question correctly?
Yeah, so let's say there's a design review right, for approval, and there's discussion or issues either with the landowner, basically, opposing the property would be the owner or the residents. They're opposing like the landscaping, the plants, the designing of the outside when it comes to the plants or, sprinkler systems and things like that, or the actual structure itself, what it looks like the building design, the paint, I mean, how would you deal with that if there's issues either with the property owner or the community itself when it comes to the design related?
Okay, so I am under the assumption that the property owner is proposing and it's in line with the design presented, and the people around the community had some objections to it. That's kind of the scenario I have in mind. So I do believe that it is important to take input from the community into consideration as long as it meets all the design guidelines that are written by the city. And usually during the application process, these design guidelines are being analyzed and scrutinized by the planning group, as I understand it, and it's presented to the design review team. So at the point of a design review meeting, the planning commission already has, the blessing from the professionals, if you will. And then the community has to understand that, these are the guidelines, but if anything that it's not in accordance to residential and commercial design guidelines as specified by the city, and they're brought up by the community, then they have a valid point, and definitely their point will be taken into consideration. But definitely everything that's, again, part of the design guidelines on the city side should be really what the decision should be based on.
Thank you.
Sure.
Ms. Todor, this is the last question. Please explain the duties of the Planning Commission.
Duties of a planning commission. Thank you for your question, Mr. Mayor. What does a planning commission do? First of all, the planning commission carries out the provisions of the general plan. It ensures that the zoning ordinance stays in place and it's followed as written. In addition to that, it makes recommendations and in some cases decisions for future growth, any development that come along as applications through the city, and the development and the designs for that development. And like I said, everything is in line and has to carry, and the commission carries out the provisions of the general plan as well as the zoning ordinance.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
So that was the last question, and I will turn it over now to staff for what will happen.
Okay, thank you.
So, Ms. Todor, this is Terrence. Want to thank you for your interest in this position. Margaret's going to help you get out of this room, and then at the end of all the interviews, the council will deliberate. So, thank you for your interest.
Definitely. Thank you all for your time.
The next applicant is Emily Cross, and I'll bring her in now.
Good evening, Ms. Cross. Thank you for joining us again. This process will be the same process that we went through with the Parks and Rec and Arts Commission. Each council person will ask you a question, and we will take your answers. And then at the end of it, I'll turn it to staff to let you know what the next steps are. So at this time, I'll turn it to Councilmember Mendoza.
Thank you. I want to learn more about your knowledge around Brentwood development projects. Thinking about your time before you were on commission, and then think about a specific project. What did you do to learn about that land use project, and what resources did you use? So it's anything before your time in position.
Okay. I think one development that I remember paying a lot of attention to was the streets of Brentwood. A little bit of a backstory. I'm a graduate of Liberty Union High School before it was Liberty High School, so I've been around quite a long time. And growing up, we didn't lock our doors. I cut class once, and literally my mom called Brentwood PD, and they picked me up on Marsh Creek Trail and brought me back to school. So I've been around a really long time. My first job was at a U-Pick place. So Brentwood to me was always very, very small and mom and pop shops. And when Streets of Brentwood was being presented, I was concerned for a couple of reasons. Number one, I didn't think it really fit into the Brentwood landscape. I didn't think that this high-end luxury shopping space fit who we were as representatives of Brentwood. And I think that if I had to pick one, that's probably the one that stood out to me. So what did I do to learn more about it? Well, our city provides a lot of resources. And so I spent a lot of time kind of combing through different types of documentation that's published through the city to figure out, why are we even doing this and why does it make sense? And, previously I'd been asked, what's one of the developments in Brentwood that is not my favorite? And it is the Streets of Brentwood still. But I understand economically behind the rationale for developing the Streets of Brentwood. And it makes sense. From a fiscal perspective, it makes sense to have a space where there's higher end retail. It provides jobs. It is a beautifully designed space that fit into Brentwood. And so it was one of those things where you're really divided, where I'm like, okay, fiscally, I totally get this. We need jobs. We need to have more stores in Brentwood just for retail purposes. If we're going to grow, this is a direction that makes sense to grow in. From a balance perspective, it was, I would definitely say it's a type of development that I wouldn't expect from Brentwood. I don't think it's been thriving in Brentwood because I don't think that it has attracted the type of retailers that Brentwood shoppers are interested in shopping at. So it hasn't had the economic success that I think initially it had. So I think that would be the space where I would most focus my attention on. Does that answer your question?
I want a little bit more background on the different documentation and what sources you use to analyze that information.
Okay, so we're going back many years. And so if you wanted a name or a title of a document, I unfortunately really couldn't present that to you because it has been many years, but you go onto the different planning sites and you would be able to pull up documentation. You were able to go to council meetings, you're able to go to planning commission meetings to see what the discussions were around it. So city resources.
Okay.
And if you're looking honestly, I think that you might be looking for a specific document name from way back when, and I can't provide it. No, I just can't.
No, I wasn't looking for specific document names. There's just a library of resources that we've used for many, many years that I've used probably for the last 10 years, and I was just wondering if you accessed any of that library of documentation when doing analysis. So it's okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Ms. Cross. My question is, in making land development and use decisions, how would you rate your priorities? And I'm going to give you a list. And you're welcome to pick a few and just decide what you think would be the highest ranking for you, or I can repeat them if you'd like.
Okay.
You rate your priorities between environmental impact, aesthetics, development, adjustments to municipal codes, traffic and congestion, infrastructure capacity, financial impact, and quality of life. I'm looking for what sticks out for you as your priorities.
Okay, so I'm going to write those down because that was very, very quick. If you wouldn't mind repeating the question for me, I would be very appreciative of that.
Not at all. In making land development and use decisions, how would you rate your priorities between environmental impact, aesthetics, development, adjustments to municipal codes, traffic and congestion, infrastructure capacity, financial impact, and quality of life.
I feel like we need a screen for this. All right, so I have environment, aesthetics, development, quality of life, municipal codes, financial impact. What were the two that I'm missing?
Infrastructure capacity, and let's see, you got codes, traffic and congestion. I think you got them all otherwise.
Quality of life?
Oh yeah, quality of life, thank you.
Okay, so traffic and congestion. So I think, like on any land use decision.
I'm looking at what your priorities would be for any land use decision that it would impact a large group of like that large group of things, or if there's something else you think would be a better priority, you're certainly welcome to mention that.
Okay.
But the decisions that you're making, what are you looking at first as your priorities? How do you rank that?
Okay, couple of things. Number one, before I think I can rank these, I would definitely absolutely look at history and context of where this land is and what's being presented into it. I think that being asked to prioritize just generically is a little bit of a slippery slope for me, because the history of a space and the context surrounding it are really important variables that should be acknowledged.
So can you explain to me how the history would impact a decision then?
Okay, for example, let's say right now we have some land in the community that is agriculture, right? So let's say next Thursday, and I'm literally making things up, next Thursday it was like, hey, we're going to turn this agricultural land into a high-rise, multi-family, residential behemoth, right? So if that were the case that I was presented with, I think, number one, I would really have to look at history before anything else. Why are we taking land that's been preserved for agriculture and now turning into high-density housing? That's a very different scenario that if we have something right now that's been vacant, it hasn't been farmed, it hasn't been used, it's just like this little blurb on the corner of, I'm going to make up stuff again, First and Oak, which is already developed, but let's just say. And they wanted to put in, and let's say it's zoned for, well, let's say it's zoned for agriculture. Well, let's say somebody came in and they're like, you know what, it's really close to downtown. I think that it's a really good idea to put a building in that is retail on the bottom with living spaces on top. Those are very different areas for me to be able to say which one of these priorities outranks the other. And right now in Brentwood, I don't, we're kind of at this space where there's not a ton of residential land to develop. We're at this space where we're like, okay, we're a borderline bedroom community. We need to make sure that we're developing commercial spaces so people can have jobs, and we're developing things more than just, houses out here. But the variables about what we can be presented with are so big, and Brentwood does have a lot of dynamic land use and dynamic history coming into it. And for me to say, yeah, well, that corner that's been vacant should be preserved for ag, when really that would be a great addition to downtown to have resident or retail with residential above it. That would be awesome, versus taking this expansive cherry orchard, for example, that we have, and somebody saying, I can make a lot of money if we start building high-rises here. Those are very different questions and very different priorities and long-term implications for the city of Brentwood and our residents.
I get that. I'm going to let it go and be done because I know we've got a lot of questions to ask. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Howdy, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. So mine's a two-pronged question. What have you done to prepare yourself for the role and responsibility of being a planning commissioner? And if you want to take it back to when you first applied the first time and what you did back then, and why do you believe you are more qualified for this appointment than the other applicants?
Okay. All right, what did I do to prepare myself? If we're looking back several years ago, the first thing I did was ask for a hard copy of the general plan. and hard copies of all of the smaller zoned plans, downtown specific plan, Brentwood Boulevard specific plan. Why? Because our job and our responsibility is to make sure the decisions we make align with what's touted in the general plan. And I was generically familiar with it. And even now, it's kind of just like our Bible, right? Where we have to scan through to make sure the decisions we're making align with what's in the general plan. And, you know, I felt like it was almost a kickback to grad school where you're flooded with so much information and you need to know your stuff to be able to make decisions. And if you don't know it all, because, you know, we don't know it all as planning commissioners, especially a new planning commissioner, we sure as heck don't know it all. It's our responsibility to take the time to educate ourselves. And so I did a ton of groundwork familiarizing myself with the general plan. The other work that I did is really understanding, you know, how do these meetings work? Who are the people I can ask questions to? If there's confusion or if I'm not really sure what's going on, who are my resources within city staff to make sure I've got great understanding of the decisions I'm going to be asked to make before I have to go to a planning commission meeting? So it was like me getting a PhD all over again, the amount of information that I had to familiarize myself with and the amount of time I had to build my knowledge network and platform for figuring out what's the next step, who do I contact, how do I find information I need. And I think that was probably most definitely the first thing I did to prepare myself was to build my library of knowledge. And in terms of, did that answer your question well enough? Okay. The second question is, why am I more qualified? Well, at the end of the day, this truly is a research-based position. We're presented with a big data set. And sometimes the agenda items we're looking at are hundreds of pages long. It is our obligation and it is our responsibility to read through that agenda packet, look for meaningful information, and then when there's data that's missing, or if we can't build the bridge we need to, we have to reach out and fill all of that information up with resources from staff. And so it's a research-based position where we're collecting data, we're analyzing data, we're comparing it against two different data sets, right? The agenda item versus the general plan. And then we have to be able to analyze it and talk about it in a meaningful, relevant way. So if you have a PhD, you are an expert researcher. I represent 1.1% of expert researchers in Brentwood. There is 1.1% of our population, according to several websites, that talk about what is it. So town charts and city data both talk about educational demographics. So if we're looking for people who truly are expert researchers and understand how to collect mass data, analyze mass data, get questions, ask meaningful questions, get the correct data and be able to do something productive with it in 4 or 5 days, I am a very tiny percentage of prepared people in this community to be able to do that. So if you ask why I'm better, I'm 1% of our population of expert researchers that has a proven track record in research. So I do believe that I fill that responsibility, and it does set me apart from everybody else who is interested in taking this responsibility of being a planning commissioner on.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Good afternoon, Ms. Cross. I have a question. The commission is responsible for design review approval of some new development, including the architecture, the landscaping, and lighting. Describe your decision-making process for a design review application that is opposed by the property owner or residents for reasons that are not design related. I'm sorry about that. You want me to read that again, or did you get that?
I think I got it, but if I missed something, would you mind reminding me to answer it at the end?
Exactly. Go ahead.
Okay.
That's fine.
So I think I'm gonna answer the second part of your question first. So this is actually quite common when you sit on planning, where we're presented with a design review, and it's yes, yay or nay on the design review, and the community believes that we can yay or nay the land use, the business that's going in. That's education on our part. And a lot of people in the community have reached out saying, hey, you said yes on this. I don't want that supermarket going in there. I don't want that to go in there. Part of it is our job to educate people on what we're really actually able to vote on. And not everybody's that aware of how it actually works. There's a huge learning curve to sitting on city council, planning commission, parks and any of it. There's just this huge learning curve. And in general, I don't know if everybody in the community really understands how to look for those nuances and intricacies inside an agenda item when we're actually voting. So I know I personally have had a lot of conversations with people who have been against a certain business or type of business going into a location when the only thing we were able to do was vote on the design. And so that's an education piece where we educate the public. And as civil servants, partially, that's our responsibility to educate the public and answer to the questions that they present to us. The first part of the question is what is my process for looking at design review? Well, one of the things that we're supposed to really look at is how does this fit into the general aesthetic of the buildings that are already approved around it. And so, gosh, a couple of years ago, 2 years ago, I mean, it must have been within the last year or two, right? And it was pre-COVID, so probably 2 years ago, there was a preschool, Love for Learning, that had a design that they were presenting to go on Balfour, almost at Brentwood Boulevard. And I thought it was really, really bold compared to the rest of the design aesthetic that we have throughout Brentwood. And I had to ask a lot of questions. And stemming from that now, well, before COVID, you know, we started to pass around actual boards that say, this is the texture, this is the physical color, this is what the tile is going to look like. And, you know, it's important that the buildings fit into the general dynamic aesthetic, I'm smushing my words together, the general aesthetic that is in an area, so we don't have a building that just sticks out like a sore thumb. But the flip side is, are the design guidelines filling the requirements as outlined within our general plan? We have very specific guidelines. So it's almost us, again, having to do multi-levels of research and data analysis. What are the guidelines? What do they want? And what is already in existence in the community around it? And can they meld together in a cohesive, meaningful way?
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay, so this is the last question. Please explain the duties of the Planning Commission.
All right. So the duties of the Planning Commission are quite extensive. And, you know, I mentioned Planning Commission boot camp a while ago. The learning curve is incredibly steep. I would say initially when I was sitting on the Planning Commission, I was very, very naive. And I thought, we're going to be thrown a couple of papers that have some drawings on it. And, you know, we're going to be like, yay or nay. And now I know the responsibilities are when you get a packet, you immediately sit down and you start to take notes. You have to understand what is being presented with you. My goal every single time I get an agenda packet is to sit down. I print out the big parts because, like, I'm kind of old school and I like to use highlighters and not just, like, stare at stuff on the screen. Where if I have questions, I can refer back to the general plan and I can refer additional questions to staff. And so our obligation is to look at what's presented, make sure we understand what's being presented, compare what's being presented with the general plan, and then any questions we have to reach out to staff to make sure that our understanding is comprehensive. We're then asked to make sure that when we're voting on whatever the agenda item is, whether it's review, land use, that we are making decisions that support what's outlined in the general plan. Also, part of that research process for me really was going out to site. I learned very early on that if I just looked at stuff on a piece of paper, I couldn't really picture stuff in my head very well, if that makes sense. And so if it was on the corner of Balfour and Brentwood Boulevard, let's say, I like to go to the corner of Balfour and Brentwood Boulevard and actually look at what's being presented so I can see it there. So there's a lot of work that goes into it. There is a ton of time that goes into it. And it's a lot of reading, a lot of highlighting, a lot of referring back to the general plan. Like I said, I have a paper copy, and it's beat up and it's used because I do use it as a reference regularly. And asking questions of staff and then making a decision based on what's in the general plan when we go and sit at a plan meeting.
Thank you. So at this time, I'll turn it to staff, and they will give you the steps to what is going to happen next.
Thank you guys very much for your time.
Commissioner Cross, this is Terrence. Wanted to thank you for your application to continue on the Planning Commission. Margaret's going to take you to another room, and the council will deliberate when they've finished interviewing all the applicants, and after that time there'll be consideration of which applicant goes forward. So again, thank you for your service to the community, and thank you for your interest in this position. So have a good day.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Griddle.
The final applicant this evening is Dave Sparling, and I will bring him in now.
Good afternoon or evening.
Good or evening, one of those, Mr. Sparling. Thanks for coming with us again. So this process is going to be exactly the same process that was used by council for the recent Parks and Rec Commission as well as Arts Commission. Each council person will ask you a question. It's the same question that has been asked to everyone that's been interviewed. And at the end of that, I'll turn to staff, and they will tell you what next steps to take. So at this time, I will turn it to Councilmember Mendoza.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Sparling. I want to learn more about your knowledge around Brentwood development. Thinking about a specific project, what did you do to learn more about a recent land use project, and what resources did you use?
Sure. Thanks for the question. So I think, the last couple of years I've paid attention to, I've attended most planning commission meetings and most city council meetings to learn more about what's been going on with the city. And I think one of the more interesting projects that I thought should have been based on land use and zoning, should have been a fairly easy process, but turned into be a protracted one, was the Rotten Robbie gas station process. I mean, that area, I understand the concerns around people in the community not wanting, more gas stations and that, but that's kind of a separate point. So in looking at, what was the issue with it was, I took a look at the general plan, what the general plan said, took a look at, even the commercial industrial guidelines that are out there. I think there's 11 documents that are on the city's website that I've perused over the past couple of years to learn more about the planning process. And to me, that was something that was very easy and should have been approved much quicker than it was, outside of the politics around it and the sound study that needs to be done. But yeah, there is a ton of resources out there. So certainly from a preparation standpoint, if there's something outside the staff document that is published that I would need to review before each planning commission meeting, there's lots of information available out there for me to take a look at to make sure that I'm educated on what I'm going to be reviewing. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Sparling. In making land development use decisions, how would you rate your priorities? And I'm going to list them. You're welcome to. I can take them slow, and you can write them down. You can pick a few and just talk about why you prioritize them. You are not required to address every single one.
Okay.
Environmental impact, aesthetics, development, adjustments to municipal codes, traffic congestion, infrastructure capacity, financial impact, and quality of life. And again, pick the few that you want to talk about, however you want to rank those, and why they're your priorities.
Yeah, so great question. I think, one, the environmental impact has to be looked at first, right? CEQA, you have to make sure that any impact of a project is mitigated. So that would certainly be first, and certainly being in California, that's a primary concern. Secondly, the way I think about Brentwood and Brentwood's future, I think about Brentwood being at a pivot point right now. We're approaching build-out. So we have limited land to use to make sure that we're continuing to generate tax revenue in order to afford the programs that people want and additional programs that we don't have today that citizens want. So it would have to be, the economic impact of a project. And I think then I would go to traffic, because certainly traffic is an issue in Brentwood. It used to take a lot shorter amount of time to get from one side of town to the other. And I'm one of the 80% of people non-COVID who spends up to 3 hours commuting a day. So traffic would be another one. And in infrastructure, my assumption around infrastructure is you're meaning things like schools. So absolutely schools would be where I would go.
Although I know, I'm sorry to interrupt. I know schools are not allowed to be part of the decision, so however you'd like to address that.
Yeah, so the way I think about schools and infrastructure, right, is that part of planning is understanding how everything fits together, right? Because we don't live in a vacuum. So projects impact us beyond the project itself. I know the Planning Commission's job is to look at the project, the particular project that they're reviewing, but it has impacts beyond that. And so things like school, things like traffic, things like quality of life have to be considered in exchange for what value the community is getting out of it. And if the value rises above the cost, then it's a good project. But I think one of the main reasons why I wanted to apply for this is to be a part of the decision-making process for commercial development, because commercial development is going to be pivotal for Brentwood's future. We moved here 16 years ago, primarily because of the schools and the small town feel. That feel is still there, but we need to protect that legacy. We need to make sure that we have the infrastructure to support the development that we have, but we also have to plan for future commercial development. Because if we don't, we're going to end up in a situation where budgets may have to be cut or frozen, and programs that city council people and citizens want, we won't be able to afford. Or we'll have to cut other things, Fifth Beat being the example. That was postponed because of concern for the budget impacts to COVID. Can I answer your question?
Definitely. Thank you.
Good evening. What have you done, mine's a two-pronged question. So what have you done to prepare yourself for the role and responsibility of being a planning commissioner? And why do you believe you are more qualified for this appointment than the other applicants?
Great question. So I would start out with the fact that part of the reason why I attended all the meetings that I've attended, I do the readings anyways for both planning and city council, because I want to understand what's going on within the city. The city's been great to my family and I, and so it was important for me to get involved and try to find a way to give back. Planning is a way that I think I can lend a skill set. I'm in business, and I think I would bring a different approach to projects, an analytical approach with a business mind that has, one of the things I think that the public is concerned about, maybe not people on the city council, is conflict of interest. Because I don't work in the city and I'm a resident here, there is no conflicts of interest on any project that would come before me. The only possible project that I know of that there could be a conflict of interest would be the Deer Ridge project that the World Business Academy has submitted to the city, and that's only because I live in Deer Ridge. That would be the only conflict of interest that I would need to get direction from council to understand if I could be part of that process given where I live. But I've reviewed, the general plan, the zoning map, municipal code zoning. I've looked at all the residential projects. I think there's currently 8 projects that have not come before the planning committee that are in front of the city. There's 2 commercial plans. In addition, I've taken a look at the California League of Cities Planning Commission Academy that's coming up later in March, and looking forward, if selected, to learning more about that. I don't have the traditional experience of maybe some that you would select, because of the zoning, but 20 years ago when I started in the job that I'm in, it's a science-based job. I didn't know anything about science. Now I understand the workflows around complicated projects. I feel pretty confident in my ability to, on things that I don't know that I need to know, I'll be able to pick up pretty quickly. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, Mr. Sparling. How you doing?
Good.
That's good. So I have a question here. The commission is responsible for design review approval of some new development, including the architecture, landscaping, and lighting. Describe your decision-making process for a design review application that is opposed by the property owner or resident for the reasons that are not design related.
Sure. Thank you for the question. I think the design review process, the way I compare it to is kind of what we do, how I approach a project for work, right? It's really all about form, fit, and function. First of all, does it belong there based on the zoning code? If it does, okay. Then it becomes about the design. Design is how I look at it is in the eye of the beholder. From a commercial standpoint, I'm comfortable with commercial design. I'm in new buildings on a regular basis. Now these are science buildings, right? But they have a lot of architectural features in it. There are things that I like and there are things that I don't like. I talk to companies who design these buildings and they turn out differently than they thought. So I've learned a lot from that. But I see new designs all over the Bay Area and in Oregon. I've seen San Carlos develop, been in a lot of those buildings. I've seen South San Francisco turn into about biotech capital of the world, and have a lot of features that I've seen that I like. I think from a residential standpoint, there are some basic things that I look for when I'm looking at homes. Right. One of the things, and I think we talked about this last time, Vice Mayor, which is if you have a long wall that faces the street that's visible, right? It needs to have some features in it. It can't just be a flat wall. It needs to have some architectural character to it. Certainly a new project also needs to match the existing character of the neighborhood around it, and has that Brentwood feel that is so often referenced in planning committee meetings. In terms of dealing with the potential conflict of either the public or applicants, I go back to form, fit, and function. If it's supposed to be there, if it can be there by our zoning codes, then it can be there. From a design review standpoint, it has to fit the neighborhood. You're not going to please everybody. You have to do the right thing for the city, and you have to do the right thing for the applicant. The general plan and the residential and guidelines and the commercial and industrial guidelines that we have should be followed. And if they're followed, then some people may not like the outcome, but you're not going to please everybody in any design review that you do. And I know people are not happy with the Amber Lane design review that was just recently done, but those were tough decisions the Planning Commission had to make, and they're not going to please everybody. I'm sure that the applicant was not happy that the design was not accepted the way they wanted it. The changes that they wanted were made, and I know members of the public, based on the meeting, they were not pleased with some of the adjustments that the Planning Commission made. So it's not about always compromise. You got to try to do the right thing for the project and for the city in the long run, not in a vacuum.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Sparling, this question. Please explain the duties of the Planning Commission.
The duties of the Planning Commission?
Yes.
So the duties of the Planning Commission, really I look at the purpose of planning, how I think about planning is planning needs to be done in order to set expectations for all sides, right? So starting with the general plan. If form, fit, and function work, then that's the easy part. Then it becomes about design review. I think if the city staff and the city council want to change the zoning aspects of where things go in the city, then that's fine. And the Planning Commission's view is to make sure that we check all those boxes to that the general plan And the commercial and industrial guidelines and residential guidelines are followed. And if they're followed, then the project should move forward. Because again, it goes back to form, fit, and function. And then it becomes about design review, making sure the design of the project fits the neighborhood and makes sense. And things like traffic are mitigated as well. So that's what I would say is what I think the overall duties of the planning commissioner. I know it's more detailed than that, but at a high level, that's how I think about planning.
Okay, thank you very much for that answer. So at this time, I will turn it over to staff, and they will direct you as to the next steps tonight.
Okay.
Thank you again.
Yep.
Mr. Sparling, this is Terrence. Thank you for your interest in this position. At this time, Margaret's going to escort you out virtually, and the City Council will be deliberating and deciding on their top candidates. Staff will let you know the outcome of the deliberation. So thank you for your interest and in this position.
Okay, thank you.
Have a great day.
Bye, you too. Bye-bye.
Mr. Mayor, are you muted?
I am unmuted now. So at this time, we will go across like we did last time, and each council person give your preferences in order. Start with Councilmember Mendoza.
Real quick, Mayor, I have a question. So I know Faye wasn't able to participate. Does that mean she doesn't have another opportunity? I mean, what happened? Did she pull out completely, or was it because work-related, family-related, or the reason why she couldn't be here? What are those circumstances? And how's that handled?
I'll turn that to staff. I don't know the answer to that.
She only said unforeseen circumstances. The tone of her text to me was that she understood she wouldn't be considered. She asked to thank the mayor and the city council for their consideration.
Okay, thank you, Terrence.
Yeah, and back to Mayor Bryant, it says we have discussion first and then we vote.
Yeah, well, however you'd like to do it. I was just going to go by the way that we've done it first, but we can combine the two and then vote.
Yeah, I think we need to have a little bit of discussion. I was very adamant last time about knowing why someone and why not someone. And I'm more impressed with people that I didn't expect to be impressed with. With Mr. Sparling, I was super impressed. I didn't know how much detail he actually does on a day-in, day-out basis. And we all know I know Sinziana because we know each other from the city because we, blended on rezone and stuff. I was actually, there's a lot I learned about her that I didn't know either. I had no idea that she had a real estate license. And I don't know if you know, but I have I let it expire, but I do have my real estate license. And it is a lot of education. I think education that would really prepare someone for a planning role. So I had no idea. I had no idea her mom was an architect. I have to say, I did watch a year and a couple meetings to understand what exactly they were doing and how they did it. And I watched them trying to understand if I would be able to support Emily being on the commission. And my concern, and unless someone knows something different, is that there was quite a few, she said she's an analyst, and it's great to hear that she's an analyst. When you watch her meetings, I don't see analytics. On the contrary, I have seen where she says, I even wrote comments like, same comments as Commissioner Ziegler, same comments as Commissioner Ziegler. And it's interesting, if you can do the analytics, what is your point of view? Like, I wanted to hear her point of view and how she felt about it. If I go back to Amber Lane, she'd been almost in position a year, and they had gotten a lot of training. And my concern is that with 20% build out, she they went through everything. You know, there was a couple commissioners that really did do a lot of analytics. And, I mean, they went down to the roofing material, the siding material, you know, because that is what they're voting on. They're voting on, does this project match our guidelines? And from what we heard tonight, a lot of people get that. But when I watched her in a meeting, she asked what asphalt shingles were versus concrete tiles a year in. And she asked that knowing she was going to come into a design review meeting where that would be kind of come up. And not only did she ask about it, but then she asked if she could punt it back to the design review committee and not make a decision. So unless someone has seen something different, I haven't seen analytics. So if anyone has examples of her really doing analytics, that would be great, because never once, maybe once she brought up traffic where other commissioners really brought it up. So from an analytical perspective, I know you guys know her more than I do. So if you're going to put her on the list, I would like to know where, you know, and I'm sure you probably have some examples, and that would be great. I want to hear them. If you could tell us why, because she was on your list last time.
Yes, just over the years and understanding the amount of training that our planners go through, and the background that she has in studying, you know, on a personal level, I don't know any of these applicants on a personal level. I haven't ever spent any time with them outside of the interview process. And so I don't really have any background other than what's going on.
City business. Like, I mean, I'm hoping that you all watch some some planning commission meetings, because the best indicator of future performance is past performance. So if we're going to get past performance and there's not going to be any analytics carried out, then what, I mean, it's just like not having a seat filled. So did you watch the meetings?
I have watched quite a few of the meetings, and so, yes, I have.
Okay, so can you give me some examples of where you felt like she did a great job analyzing a project?
Not off the top of my head. I wasn't watching each individual's performance as much as I was how they worked to make sure that their job was done. Because there were several occasions where it was pretty clear to me as a whole that sometimes the Planning Commission at that time, that commission, struggled with keeping in mind what some of these questions that we asked just outlined. You know, what is the job of the Planning Commission? What are your priorities? And if you are there for design review, it's not really appropriate to give opinion on things that are outside of what you're there doing the job to do. And so I've noticed that she in the past has been able to keep focus on what they were focusing on, what they were doing the job on as far as design review or other things. But again, I wasn't focused necessarily on any specific planner as much as the Planning Commission and how they were doing the job as a whole, and listening to what the community had to say and how they implemented the input from the community into being able to explain, because it was brought up pretty frequently by a couple of the interviewees today, that much of the community is not aware of what the job of the Planning Commission is. And so when you go in to express frustration and you don't know exactly what the limitations legally are, there are a lot of things that can't even be discussed at that time or on that project because it's not in the purview of the Planning Commission. And so in my mind, she understands what the job is that she's been selected to do.
And then also I'd like to mention is that she has a historical piece of Brentwood, right? She had mentioned that within her interview that she's been here the longest probably than anybody that's here, right? And, I mean, probably myself and her, but she has the historical piece. So I think her passion and doing what's right for Brentwood is in her heart, right? Not only as a new resident, but a historical resident. I think when you talk about the educational piece, I mean, she's one of the most educated there, right? She has the education. She's, you know, everything else. I know.
But she doesn't have an education.
There's other ways to get education, but she does have the education. And then I think that she has the 2 years of experience. I think I agree with the mayor in regards to, you know, I'll be honest, you don't learn everything right away, right? It takes time. And obviously I think all of us have made mistakes and have done things that maybe we look back and we say, God, I would have said that or done that differently. But I think she comes with 2 years of experience, which is really important, especially where we're at now in regards to some big decisions coming up. So for me, she comes with some not only her historical, I'll be honest, I've been to one or two of the Planning Commission meetings. I don't go to them all the time. I do have some small kids that I have to be a father to, but I have attended like two of them. And I wasn't also there to look at any specific planning commissioner to see how they were acting or how they were questioning. I was more just to see how they were working together, but also what the topics were. So in saying that, I mean, Emily comes with a lot of that background / education / experience. And it's good to have that on our planning commission.
I guess I just want, I mean, it's like I look back at, was it Walnut Villas? And it was amazing to me that our planning commission, we went 2-2, and 2 voted no and 2 voted yes. And because of that passion that the 2 commissioners that voted no had, we actually got CFDs from CNO, right? I mean, not from CNO, from Shea Homes. And it's like, it's that kind of caring about the community and trying to fight for the best development. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. I mean, I get it. She's been there 2 years. I mean, it's you know, it's fine.
Yeah, but I think go ahead. I'm sorry, Councilmember.
So it's just making sure that the people we select just have, with 20% build out on residential, we know that's a hot topic. With our fire services the way they are, I mean, right now we haven't done consolidation or anything. Just making sure that we have people that also think about all of those other things. Because, I mean, I thought it was awesome that Walnut Villas got CFDs. I mean, I was ecstatic about it. Like, I didn't come and speak against it the second time. The first time I came and spoke against it for fire. And I'm sure you all want commissioners that are going to be focused on residents and making sure that they're good negotiators and good at getting the best product for their residents.
Okay, thank you. We've got time, I hope. So we'll make the right decision. I'm feedback right now. Just so Councilmember Meyer.
It looks like Karen was about to speak. I'm happy to let her speak first. No? Okay, then I will speak. I did come into this thinking I knew what to expect, not making any decisions or anything like that, but just based on applications and history and experience and involvement and all that, I thought I would have a better idea going in about how I was going to feel at this point after having gone through the interviews. So I was surprised by a few things. I have to say, I think David Dolter is an incredibly strong candidate, and I would support him moving forward positively. I think the understanding of all of the different aspects and every part of the research and the experience from both sides, all of those things have a lot of value. I also, in looking at all the different candidates, I think about who is currently on, who is for sure on the Planning Commission. And
I don't mean to stop you, but did we lose? Oh, there's Vice Chair. I thought we lost him.
Yeah, I was getting caught up in the moment. I didn't even notice. Sorry. So I would say, for example, looking at who we know positively will be on the commission right now, who from the candidates would fill in any blanks, would fill in any gaps, how they would be able to work together and completely represent the city and the needs of the city and all these other things. I also felt that David Sparling was a good fit. He did surprise me. His resume is strong, but his interview was even stronger. And I really liked the people that were talking about the understanding that, of course, that commissioners can't change the general plan, can't, they have to vote the way they have to vote in some cases based on state mandates or general plans or zoning codes or whatever. So, and understanding that, educating that, I think is very important. I'll be honest, I'm gonna say I'm a little torn between our other two candidates for a few different reasons. I felt like Sinziana Todor, I did feel like I respected her doing the work that supports this role without being a part of a commission, like doing that just independently for her own education and for, in a volunteer basis, the betterment of the city. Obviously, Emily Croft has that 2 years. I wasn't actually thrilled with her answers to a couple of questions. I felt like there wasn't I don't feel like she felt the need to fully understand and respect the question that I gave her. So I am torn between the third for me. I am feeling pretty confident about the two Davids, but I would love to hear some more feedback about the other two candidates from other council members.
So my turn? I went into this again thinking that I just by looking at the resumes and the applications themselves, having a mindset of where I thought this was going to go, and I did surprise myself. While Dave Dolter, I thought, has a great resume behind him and does give information from both sides that he could apply to this, I was concerned with a couple of his questions, specifically the most recent, that he completely agrees with the rezone update suggestions that are being made, and I'm very concerned because there was things in there that just weren't very clear, and I still need staff to come back to us and tell us exactly what they're doing on that, especially when it came to, and I agree with the minor, whatever that thing was called, the minor use permit. I agree with that in some respects, but not so much in putting a design review across that, as because I want the design review to go in front of the Planning Commission to make sure that the aesthetics are all there. But there are other things that can be done that don't necessarily need some minor changes to things that don't need to come in front of it. Also, when the question was asked on what it was that the main duty was to recommend the general plan, which we've already done our general plan. We're not going to be doing an update for some time, and make sure that the zoning is compatible. Yeah, but those are things that we're currently doing. The job to me is more of land use decisions and design review and possible recommendations for general plan or not recommendations for general plan amendments and zoning changes. So I was a little concerned with his answers there. Going into this, he was my top candidate. So I was concerned with some of his answers. Sinziana, she does do her homework. We all know she does her homework. She comes very prepared to the meetings when she comes to talk to us. And she looks over everything and brings those points forward. And I think that she could do a good job in doing that same for the Planning Commission. Emily, I think she brings in the historical perspective on it. I believe that, it does take 2 years, especially in planning. And planning is a whole different thing, whole different ball of wax than what we go through. There's a bigger learning curve. Yes, they go through the academy, which is going to help jumpstart them in that, the League of California Cities Planning Commission Academy. But I think we need somebody who, I don't think bringing in 3 brand new people is the way to go. She's got the historical component from the growth of the city, as well as the training to become a planning commissioner. I didn't go through and watch the videos, but I did go through and look at the different voting records from the different meetings, and also through some of the minutes. And so I don't have a problem with her on that part of it. And again, with Dave Sparling, I think that he'd be a great asset to the city. Bring some looking to the future and helping us with the growth of our city, bringing economic development. And while that's not necessarily the job of a planning commissioner, it doesn't hurt to have somebody who is on the planning commission who may be able to help reach out to jobs and bring them here. And while it wasn't said here, I heard there's a statement that was made that he participated in the Vacaville technology area up there. I'll have to go back to my notes to find that, but I think that, yeah, there's the 3 candidates that I'm looking at.
Okay. Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Yes. Be honest, there's 3 of them that actually were part of the other one that I thought did really well in the other interview as well, and they did just as good today. My first would be David Dolter. Comes with a lot of experience. I think he'd be a great asset to the city, but also to actually planning commissioners that are currently there, right? From his wealth of knowledge and also experience, and did really, really well. My next one would be also Emily Cross. I think going back to what Karen said and what I said earlier, if we talk about education, she has that. She also has the 2 years of experience, which we know, I personally don't know about being on the planning commission, but I know that just reading some of the stuff that we have to read from the planning commission, I mean, it's very difficult, so there's a lot of learning involved. And then I really like that she has the historical piece in Brentwood, which is great because it hopefully could balance some of those conversations. And I also agree. I think David Sparling did a great job. I think that he did very well. I'll be honest with you, he did very well the first time. I mean, he's very good. So, yeah, for me, those are the top 3 for me.
Well, the Vice Mayor and I had an advantage that the rest of the council didn't, which is, again, why I'm glad we're doing it this way. But we've had the advantage of sitting in 2 opportunities to interview, and each interview process, there were different components that each one of the people that we interviewed focused on the first time and versus the second time. And dealing with Mr. Dolter, I'll just start with him. He still is my first choice, but I've also had the opportunity to combine what I learned the first time and the second time. He, having been a chair of a planning commission, but also has worked in bringing applications and things. He knows the thing that he said in this interview that really stuck out to me the most was he knows what questions to ask, and that's one of the main things that takes the longest from what I've learned is being able to study and find information. Everyone on council can do that. It's a process of learning how to do it, and we don't have anybody on council that doesn't know how to do that and do it well in your personal lives. But knowing what questions to ask that aren't a part of a flowing conversation, that takes time. Knowing what you're not being told and to ask about that. I have to say, that I've picked up a couple tricks from Councilmember Rary over the years because of her reporting background and her ability to ask questions that weren't really a part of the conversation at first. And so that's something that really stuck out with me with him is he knows what questions to ask because of his experience. And so that is something that is absolutely essential right now, especially right now on our Planning Commission. Mr. Sparling, he did a very good job this time. I thought he did just as well or better the first time I listened to him interview. He's a very impressive person, but in addition to that, he knows what to look for and what to study, and the things that he brought out in his interview were very telling that he understands the job of the Planning Commission. And with his background and his investment in the community as being a part of the community, I think that he would do an outstanding job as well. Again, Emily Cross, she has 2 years experience. She's been a part of the community for a long time, but she also understands what the processes are. And when you bring 3 new people onto any board, it really helps to have experience there. And so I think that she would bring a tremendous component that would be missing otherwise. Frankly, one of the individuals that we did not interview tonight, their actual experience with planning is the only small fraction of difference between Mr. Sparling in the first time. It was, the Vice Mayor and I had a lot of discussion about this the first time. It was just so close because both of them brought things to the Planning Commission that were vital right now, I think. And the fact that every single person we interviewed genuinely loves Brentwood and genuinely cares for the future of Brentwood is a huge component. And it's nice to be able to have tough decisions to make from quality people in this situation versus not. So that is my feelings on it. If we're ready, if you want to have more discussion, I mean, it's totally up to you. This is our... Okay, so if we're ready, let me get to...
Actually, can I just make another comment? Sorry. I'm looking at this as a way to, I'm not looking at this as a personality, it doesn't factor in. I'm rubbing people the wrong way or any of those things. I'm trying to see this in a way that, again, what is best for moving forward? Who am I going to see being in the role? I think it's pretty clear who the rest of the council is pushing through. So I kind of feel like at this point my vote may or may not matter based on how that goes. But the decisions that I'm about to put forth, just for me, would be about the future and the future of the Planning Commission working together and asking questions that need to be asked and not just checking boxes and being a little bit more than that and challenging things a bit more. But understanding that if I push through the people I push through, not at the time thinking these are who I'm going to vote for, but the people I pushed through because I wanted to learn a little bit more about them. Knowing who was already going to be pushed through, I wanted to push through extras to get to know those people more. So just wanted to make that statement before we vote. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, at this time, then, we'll present the votes. Councilmember Mendoza, you're top.
Yeah. Dave Sparling is my number one. Just a quick thing about him. I don't know if you ever go to Heritage High School basketball games, but if you go to a game, you might see him announcing, which is where I see him a lot. So he does give a lot to his community that he doesn't even talk about. So Dave Sparling is my number one. Sinziana Todor is my number 2. Again, I mean, I've worked alongside her on projects, and I was still amazed at how much she does. And I'm amazed at how much time she gives this community. And I think that we're a better community because of her. So she's number 2. And then I think Dave Dolter has some great experience. I don't think it's secret some of us, know about some past work history, but I think we can get through all of that, and I trust that he's going to be completely unbiased and do what's the best for Brentwood.
Thank you. Councilmember Meyer?
So my first choice is David Dolter. I read through all of his documents he submitted and checked his website and had some similar kind of moments, but I do feel that given the interview this afternoon and the vast amount of experience he brings to the table, he's my number 1. My number 2 is David Sparling because he did bring himself forward to the extent that I was just very surprised by everything he brought to the table that I wasn't aware of just by reading the resume. And then my third is Sinziana Todor because I believe that she would come in and understand her restrictions and ask questions that need to be asked and challenge things without checking boxes. And I think right now it's not taking a chance. We've seen a history from her of all of her research and understanding. She understands more than most people out there, and I do think she'd be a good fit. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rary.
My first one was Sinziana Todor. Second, Emily Cross. And third, Dave Sparling.
Okay, Vice Mayor.
Johnny, I can't hear you.
Sorry about that. Mr. Dolter, Mr. Sparling, and Emily Cross.
And my first, Mr. Dolter. My second choice was Mr. Sparling. And my third choice, Emily Cross.
I'll go ahead and share my screen with the picks. Did I get everybody's correct?
It looks like we lost Johnny. Oh, there he is.
No, I'm here. I'm trying to get back on my video. I can hear you guys. We can keep going. I'm here. I pushed on this thing to look at it bigger, and I lost it. You guys still there?
Yes, still here.
Yes, we're still here.
Okay. We can keep moving forward, Mayor. I'm here. I just can't. Trying to get on the video.
Well, there are 5 votes for Mr. Sparling to move forward. All 5 council members voted for him. Let's see. We have 3 votes for the Cross, 3 votes for Sinziana Todor. And we have 4 votes for Mr. Dolter to move forward. So based upon the application materials, interviews, our discussion, and your recommendations, these are the three names I'm going to bring to council and recommend appointing for Planning Commission. Mr. David Dolter.
Are we doing them one at a time like last time, or are you going to do them all? How are we doing this?
We can do that.
Yeah, I think that would be good. Like, let's go through each one.
Okay, so Mr. David Dolter.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Did you like we did last time? I'm confused.
Yes. So I will have. Yes.
Actually, if the city clerk could do a roll call vote for each of the candidates. Thank you.
Yes.
So this is the roll call vote for Mr. Dolter. Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Rary?
No.
Okay, what are we saying yes, and I mean, what are we voting on right now?
Moving
the first one you said?
Mr. David Dolter.
Oh, okay.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Mayor Bryant?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1.
The next name I'm presenting to council is Mr. Dave Sparling. I recommend appointing for Planning Commission. If I could get a roll call vote, Margaret.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Rary?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Mayor Bryant?
Yes.
Carries 5-0.
The third name I'm bringing to council in recommendation for appointing to Planning Commission is Emily Cross. Margaret, could I get a roll call vote on that, please?
Councilmember Mendoza?
No.
Councilmember Meyer?
No.
Councilmember Rary?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Mayor Bryant?
Yes.
That carries 3-2.
Okay. So having made those votes, we now have the recommendation and the approval of council for the three applicants, Mr. David Dolter, Mr. Dave Sparling, Ms. Emily Cross, as recommended to council and voted for. And so at this time, we have completed the process for this special meeting. And I want to thank all of you for all of your hard work and making this schedule. I thank all of the applicants as well. We didn't have a single applicant that wasn't highly qualified and would have done a good job. So at this time, I need a motion to adjourn, please. A roll call vote.
So moved.
We have a first and a second.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Meyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Rary?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Mayor Bryant?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
We are adjourned. Thank you, staff, and thank you, all applicants. Thank you, council. Be safe.
Thanks for using WebEx. Visit our website at www.webex.com.